Yeah. The Zionist cookie? Absolutely. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Anbiya wa Mursaleen Nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. In this chapter, Imam Ghazāli, he talks about the reality of anger. And the interesting thing is how he deals with anger is very benign. He doesn't talk about it in a negative way. He doesn't talk about it in a positive way. He just talks about it as this power. He talks about it as this emotion that exists in man, and how it is to be utilized, what happens when it uses in a good way, and what happens when it's used in an evil way. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created animals, he made them prone to be corrupted and deadly due to main reasons, and those are internal and external reasons, which we'll talk about. But he also blessed them with that which will prevent them from being corrupted, protect them from being destructive until their given time that has been preserved in the tablet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he created us. And what are some things that he put inside man? What are some natural things that we find? So desires, absolutely. What else? The only desires, right? This is what happens when you only have men in the room, right?
No, I said
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. So desires, what else? Fitra. Okay, but what fitra entails a lot of things. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the ability to be logical. Absolutely. What else? He's given us the ability to, what emotions can we express? Or what do we find naturally within every single human being? I'm sorry? Kindness. Okay. The ability to be kind, for sure. Yes. Sadness, right? Sadness is a real characteristic that we all have. Anger, happiness, right? These are all characteristics. Fear. These are things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed within all of us. And it's important to understand how we deal with them. And there's a reason that He Azza wa Jal has given us these feelings. So what are some of the internal reasons? So he says this has to do with heat and moisture. Does it sound familiar? Have you guys heard this before? It's actually very Hellenistic. So there's a lot of Greek philosophy that he actually, right. So he borrows a lot from that. So basically he's saying that there has to be a balance between this heat and this moisture. So the heat, it comes from where? Anger. It comes from anger, right? So this heat comes from anger, and the moisture, it actually comes from nourishment. And what happens is that basically, if we use this example, that if there's too much heat, what happens to the moisture? Right, it evaporates, right? It evaporates and it dries an individual out. And if there's too much moisture, a person becomes right. All that, like, so wet. You're right, but flaccid, right? You know, a person just doesn't have any drive. Right, there's no drive in that individual, and this is something, again, we'll talk about. And it's, and this goes back to a lot of the discussion that we had in developing that balance. Right, having that balance is something that's fundamental. Having that balance is something that's important. What are some of the external reasons? So again, he says that this fire, because fire was the essence of where anger was taken from. This leads to anger, and this was placed in man, and the source of this was placed in his heart. And this, now the heart, what does it do? It pumps this blood and it pumps this heat through the veins of an individual. So this anger, where can it potentially reach? I'm sorry? Well, it reaches the heart for sure. Where else does it reach? Huh? It reaches everywhere, right? You know what I mean? Like, is there a part of the body where the veins and the arteries don't reach? Right, it reaches everywhere. So the potential and the effect of this anger has an effect on the entire body. Do you have like where are you getting all these snacks from? all these kosher snacks. And the thing is, the natural thing with heat is that the heat rises. Implying here what? What is he saying here? By saying that heat rises, what is Ghazāli telling us?
It goes to
it goes to the mind, right? So it affects what?
logic.
It affects our logic. It affects our core. It affects our understanding. It affects how we deal with certain things and how we view certain things. It's just like boiling water, right? So when you boil water, steam rises, right? It's not like these things settle. It's not like these things actually move down. So over here, who's he talking about? Oh, okay, here. No, so alhamdulillah. No, it took me a second. I was like, what is he saying here? So basically, how is anger expressed in terms of the relationships that we have? We have three types of relationships, right? We have relationships where we are the superior, right? Whether we're a boss, whether we're a father, whether we're in some type of supervisor position. When I am angry at my subordinate, is there a limit to that anger? No. So when I get angry, when it's my subordinate, I can actually get angrier. And why do I get angrier?
Knowing that they can't.
Because they can't reciprocate. Like, you know what I mean? Like they cannot, right? They can't push back. They can't fight back. So it allows my anger to actually expand and further. Those individuals who are above me. So the anger toward my father or a supervisor or somebody who is put in a position of authority, how does the anger express there? It's suppressed. Why? Fear of
Being destroyed.
fear of repercussions, right? Fear of repercussions. And this is why this anger is suppressed. And what happens is, like, you have the anger, it's this big, right? You're so angry at this individual. It eventually, that suppression causes it to become sadness. Someone who's equal to you, your friend, co-worker. You still get angry at this person, right? So you can actually express anger toward this person. And there's a balance here between anger and sadness, right? Because even with an equal, there's an element of what? There's an element of suppression that's there. So there is this anger and there is this sadness, and it's kind of a balance between the two, because depending on how close or how far that friendship is, it allows this anger to expand or allows the sadness to expand. Does that make sense? Right, so it's a balancing act here between anger and sadness, and the sadness is a result of the inability to express anger and to channel it. So the place of anger is the heart, and this is what Ghazāli, in a lot of things happen in the heart. So when he talks about, the emotional center, it's in the heart. When he talks about the spiritual mind, right? So you have the logical mind and you have the spiritual mind. The spiritual mind, he says, in the heart. It's a center for a lot of these actions. It's a center for a lot of these things. And the anger, what happens is when it reaches the heart, and because it's in the heart, the more it consumes the heart, the more it acts like boiling water, and the more it has an effect on our logical mind. But is it bad? Not necessarily, because it is through anger that we're able to prevent harm before it happens. It is through anger that we fulfill revenge after it happens. It is through anger that you this idea of revenge, this idea of getting back at someone, it is fueled essentially by anger, right? It's fueled by anger. This idea of getting back at someone is fueled by him. There are types of people, right, in regards to their anger. There are people who do not have anger, right? They just fundamentally, they don't get angry. They're very tepid, you know what I mean? They're very cool people. They're very cool-minded. Those who are anger very quickly, right? And then there are those who are balanced. And this is like with most things. This is like with most things. So an individual who is angerless, there's he calls it a weakness. He calls it a weakness. So an individual who doesn't have this sense of anger, he says that this is actually a sign of weakness. Why do you think that is?
Because he can use it as a sort of strength for the channel.
He doesn't have anger. And Ghazāli says that this is weak.
Because he doesn't have that.
Yeah, he doesn't have anger, so this is weak. Why? Because people can take advantage of him. People can take advantage of him. Ahsant. That's exactly what it is. So whoever's inside and does not anger, then anger, he's a donkey. And what donkeys are used for what? They're worked for laborious work. And it doesn't matter how hard you work them, they will continue working. Whoever has a complete lack of passion, right? So he equates passion and anger also. Then he is extremely deficient. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he describes the companions as what? وَالَّذِينَ مَعَهُ أَشِدَّاءَ عَلَى الْكُفَّارِ رُحَمَاء بَيْنَهُم. That those who follow him are harsh toward the disbelievers and compassionate toward each other. So those of you who are nice to disbelievers, may Allah guide you. What is this in context to? War. Huh? This is in context to war, right? This is in context to war. It's not in context to our daily dealings.
When I said thank you to the cashier,
Astaghfirullah, may Allah guide you. And he said to his prophet, Ya ayyuhan nabi, jahid al-kuffar wal munafiqin waghluz alayhim. That prophet, strive against the disbelievers and the hypocrites and be tough with them. Like having this, channeling this anger in a positive way that is meant to defend rights, channeling this anger in a way that is meant to protect yourself, your family, your religion. All of these are praiseworthy things, and not just praiseworthy, and a Muslim needs to have these things. Here he says, as for toughness and harshness, these are signs, again, of strength, which are signs of strength and passion. These are the essence and the source of these are from anger. Someone who is extremely angry, right? So this is the second type of person. This person, Ghazāli equates him to someone who's lost, right? Because they have the inability to actually think straight. They have the inability to come up and deal with the situation as it presents itself to them. They lose sight, they lose insight, right? They don't know the direction that they're moving in, right? So these are people who have this tendency to black out because of anger, to lose the ability to focus, to lose the ability to think due to their anger. Their anger consumes who they are and it consumes their thoughts. So what are some of the reasons? In Ghazāli here, he talks about sometimes that there are people who are naturally angry, right? They have that tendency for that. And there's some people who are raised that way, right? There are individuals who are raised that way. And again, is it important for me to understand if it's nature or nurture? No, it's important for me to what? To understand and control it. So here he says that it is natural, right? The essence of anger is natural. Right? The essence of anger is natural, and this is something that all of us have. But does an individual have a tendency to be more or less angry? This is something that you can have the nature versus nurture argument. But the essence of anger in and of itself is something that is found in every single human being. So a person who mixes with people who are constantly angry, he himself will end up being angry, right? And in those circles where rage and anger is something that is praised, it's actually taken as a sign of manliness, right? It's taken as a sign of power. It's taken as a sign of superiority. And when you have this characteristic that is praised in such a way, you yourself want to take on that characteristic because you believe that everyone around you is praising it. And you think that this is actually something that is praiseworthy, when in reality, it is something that it is to stay away from. So the example he gives here, when we have dealt with this, it's like, yeah, man, if he said that to me, I would have done this. Oh, I don't let anyone talk to me like that. Have we heard, like, and we've heard this, right? It's like, no, I don't deal with that. Like, this is not something I would stand for. Or how do you let him talk to you like that? Have we heard this kind of speech before? And this is exactly what Ghazāli is talking about here. Like hanging around and being around those people who are trying to incite you, hanging around with people who are trying to tell you that you need to be angry and you need to be upset and you need to do this. This is extremely, extremely, extremely problematic. And the solution is to what? Distance yourself, right? These are not people that we should be around. These are not the type of people we should spend our time with. These are not the people who are feeding us and telling us the characteristics that should be praised and characteristics that should be encouraged. So here he's talking about how anger is like a fire, right? So the more you kindle it, what happens? Right, the bigger it gets. And you guys have heard like of a negative feedback loop, right? So like I get angry and I think about my anger and what happens? I get angrier. And now that I'm angrier, I think more about it. What happens? You know, and you just you get caught up in this cycle and you just constantly are getting angrier either at yourself or others. And we'll talk about ways to actually channel this and what we're supposed to do about this anger and how to stop that negative feedback loop, because that's something that is extremely dangerous. You know, when we get caught up in our own minds, it's very challenging. It's very difficult, you know, unless we learn how to channel, unless we learn how to discuss, unless we learn how to, you know, really sometimes even embrace certain emotions. This is something that is fundamental and something that's really important. So he's saying here is it not only has an effect on the mind, it can actually have an effect on other senses, right? When I see somebody and I'm angry, how am I going to view this person? Right? When I walk by this person, when I hear this person, when I deal with this person, my worldview immediately becomes skewed. And it is only skewed, like nothing has changed in this person. The only thing that has changed is my perception. And my perception is so easily skewed by anger. It's so easily skewed by these rich emotions that we have. It's important to learn how to harness them so that we're able to deal with reality as it is. Because in this, I know it's like tangentially related, but even when it comes to dealing with like transgender issues, or when it comes to dealing with pronouns and all of these other things, what happens is that you are imposing your reality or your perception on me, right? And when you're imposing your perception on me, you are forcing me now to disconnect from reality. The problem with that is reality is the only shared experience we all have. In the moment we remove that shared experience, then there is no base for us to actually converse on. You guys see the problem with that? And the same thing here with anger. Unless I remove that anger, I'm not going to be able to deal with my brother, my sister, my friend, my father, my mother, because now reality is no longer what? It's no longer connecting us. It's no longer a shared experience that we have. And that perception and that break in reality is what is going to cause that break in that relationship. It's going to cause a breakdown in that conversation. It's going to cause a breakdown in that particular situation. So here he talks about this fire just keeps growing in the heart. In the heart, he's describing here like a cave. If I burn, why is it that we burn fires, or if you guys have seen it, they burn fires outside of a cave. Nobody actually ever lights a fire in the cave. Why?
You're gonna suffocate.
You're going to suffocate yourself, right? The moment you light a fire, there's going to be smoke. And what happens is you end up suffocating yourself. He's equating this to fury. So when an individual is furious, they are just feeding themselves this anger. And what happens is that they're actually suffocating the rest of their senses. Are you guys following?
Yeah.
Right. So when we suffocate our senses, this is why it's become problematic. But when you put a fire outside, that means that you are actually channeling this energy in a positive way. Because why is it that we put fires outside of the cave? So we can still benefit from its heat without being harmed by its smoke. He also uses the example of as a boat being tossed in the waves. He said that if, regardless of how violent and turbulent the sea is, if the captain is level-headed, he will be able to make it through the journey. Some signs of anger, and I'm sure many of us are familiar with this. Color change, especially in the extremities. It's probably more with white people. Right? No. Doing things out of order, or what happened? Like red ears or something bad. Yeah, I don't know. Right? I love this stuff. Yeah. So like doing things out of order haphazardly. Why? Because I'm not thinking logically. Right? I'm not thinking logically. I'm not thinking clearly. So I'm just doing things haphazardly. I'm doing things out of order. Confused speech, right? Have we heard somebody who's angry, like you just don't even understand many times what it is that they're saying or what they're doing? Reddening of the cheeks, nostril flaring, demeanor changes. So he makes an interesting observation here. He said, had you actually moved yourself or removed yourself from the situation and were able to see yourself with all of these characteristics, how would you look? You look like an idiot, right? You know what I mean? Like you would look at yourself and be like, oh man, I look like that. And it's actually something that's shameful. If I saw myself when I was angry, it's actually something that I would be ashamed of. And the reason he mentions this is that hopefully when an individual is angry or upset, he can visualize how he himself is looking when he is in that situation to kind of help, again, bring that perspective and to bring that balance back. So the internal has an effect on the external, which obviously it plays out in the body. It has an effect on the tongue. So when an individual is angry, he'll use vile language, he'll curse. Sometimes he'll have indiscernible speech. You won't be able to tell. He'll say nonsensical things. He'll use inappropriate language. He'll use regretful language. Like, how many times have many of us said something out of anger and we didn't mean it? You know what I mean? Like we just say something because we're angry at the person in front of us, even though we might not mean what it is that we're saying. The effects on the limbs. So, this should be limbs, not tongue. But, we hit, we assault people, we tear things, we become extremely destructive. Sometimes it can lead to killing. We can hurt others with intent. And if we miss, right? So if I'm angry and I go to hit somebody and I miss, what happens? I get angry. Like subhanAllah, it's ridiculous, right? You just get angrier because you hit that person. Like, and if I hit him, like, this anger, it has more effects. I'll still rip my clothes. I'll still lose, like some people, they lose conscience out of anger. Have you guys seen this or experienced this? All right. People hit themselves. You know what I mean? Like out of anger, people just like, they'll start hitting themselves. They'll fall to the ground. Some people, like they'll just flip over tables. You know what I mean? Like there's so many things that people do. And they act like someone who's drunk or confused, even though they haven't drank anything, right? You know what I mean? Like it's not like they drank anything. It's not like this person is normal. All of a sudden, this anger has inflated him to the point where now he just has lost the ability to really be cognizant of what it is that he is doing. And sometimes they're just abusive. Have you guys seen this? Have you guys ever been playing like, it's more a male thing than female thing, but I know there are some like playing video games. Have you ever felt like they're destroying the controller? You know what I mean? Like you're sitting there and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like it's broken. I swear it's broken, right? And you just, the controller is nothing. You know what I mean? Like it's an inanimate object. It did nothing to you. And I'm the one who's actually putting the inputs there. So it's just really interesting how anger takes us out of our, it takes us out of our base. Right, video games are so infuriating, man.
Dude, one time I
Yeah.
was playing at my school.
Yeah.
And like some dude, oh my god, some dude like killed me and he was like super low on health.
Yeah.
And I like slammed
The keyboard, yeah, too, yes.
so hard. Like
Yeah.
I thought I broke my hands.
Yeah.
Like, I started like going like sort of losing hands like oh. I had like football practice in like 10 minutes.
Alarm was done.
Oh, how am I gonna explain this?
I mean, I or playing against somebody. You know what I mean? So if you're playing against someone and that person is better than you, what happens? You get so much more fun. No, again, no, you had the better team. You know what I mean? Like, and you just start coming up with these excuses. And like I said, Allah bless you. So like, all of these are very strong reasons of why we should avoid falling into our anger and allowing it to consume us. At the end of the day, it's important to keep perspective. Like it's just a game, or you know what I mean? Like, or it was just a piece of clothing. Sometimes like somebody will drop something in our clothes. And, you know what I mean? Like we'll get so angry. It's okay. It's just a piece of clothing. Somebody hits our car. It's okay. It's just a car. All of these things happen, and because these things happen, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, whatever it is, like it could be a Rolls Royce, bro. It could be a Ferrari. I mean, at the end of the day, and the reason I say that is like, it's a piece of metal, right? It's an inanimate object that can be fixed.
I think what you said about anger spreading,
Yeah.
in New York, there's a culture on the road.
Uh-huh.
It's an angry culture.
Yeah.
Like people will just get out of their car.
Yeah. And why is that? Many times it's exacerbated in certain situations. So you might have somebody who's like normal, healthy, you know what I mean, like, and they have a cool temperament, but when they get on the road, what happens?
All of a sudden.
Right, all of a sudden they change. And there's a term for it. We call it what? We call it road rage. Why is it called road rage? Because they're tired of sitting in traffic. They're tired of sitting in their cars. You know what I mean? Like they're frustrated with their job. Can you see all of the channels that have been created? That what has happened is that instead of this anger actually being expressed, it's being suppressed. And where does it come out? Somebody cuts you off. You're like, this guy, I can't believe, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Or like, like the guy who drives slowly or whatever the case might be, you're a normal person, but now something triggers you and you're like, I'm gonna cut him, I'm gonna show him. And it's like, trust me, you will not be able to drive as slowly as he, you know what I mean? Like even people who will get upset with us when we're driving, right? Like they'll be like, why are you driving so slow? And blah, blah. And it's like, he will not have the patience to drive as slow as you. You know what I mean? Just give him a minute and he himself will leave. And that's what rage is, right? Rage is something that's instantaneous. It's something that it's actually very easy to let go of. May Allah protect us. And being abusive, it can be physically or verbally. So like the thing is, even like, and I'll use a video game example. How many times have we cursed at the game? You know what I mean? Like you just like, you're cursing at the game. Like you're like, in the game, it's like the game, it's an inanimate object, right? It's not like it gets, or not just that, even if you don't play video games, how about when your team is losing? Right. If your team is losing, who are you yelling at? Like you're yelling at the ref, you're yelling at the coach. How did he miss that shot? What an idiot. Like, what was he doing? What was he thinking? You know what I mean? Like, and we just get angry and we get frustrated. And the reason is because we invest ourselves into these things. But at the end of the day, it's just a game.
Good now, bro.
We're going, no, it's like just like furious. Huh? It's like, so the Lions will make it. So what is the effect that it has on the heart? Right? It increases rancor, jealousy. You get happy at other people's misfortunes. And these characteristics, they're so, look how petty they are. You know, these are such petty characteristics. You know, is this the type of person that we should be striving to become and work to be? That we're just a jealous, angry, petty individual. You know what I mean? Like we look at other people, we hope for their misfortune. When we see somebody doing something in secret, we are so petty. What are we trying to do? We're always trying to bring other people down. Because it's when I want to build myself up, the easiest way to do it is what? Huh? To get mad and throw a controller at them, right? No, no, the easiest way to do it is what? Is to bring other people down. Yeah, because it's so much harder to what?
Fix yourself.
To fix ourselves. And it's terrifying, right? It's really hard sometimes just looking in the mirror and realizing or coming to the realization like, I don't really like that person. You know, I don't like who I'm looking at. And I'm not talking about physically, right? Physically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are two things. You have mutable and immutable characteristics, right? Mutable are the things that we can change. If I don't feel like I'm physically healthy, what can I do? I can go to the gym. I can start exercising. There's some, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving me, and the things I can't change, what about those? Plastic surgery? Oh yeah, be grateful. No, why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says He made us ahsana taqweema, that the form that we are in today, this is the best possible form that I can be in.
What's the process?
It depends. It depends. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so if a person has something, it's an unnatural deformity that happens. The person has a sixth limb, for example.
No, like let's say,
Just like kida? ما يجوز.
I want bigger cheeks or-
No, ما يجوز. No, ما يجوز. Yeah.
That's not a thing. Like,
Yeah.
It is a thing.
No, it is because some people have extremely narrow noses. You know, some people have extremely wide noses. So things like, you know, making these type of adjustments, yeah, they're not permissible. Anybody, that's right. Yeah.
this is funny. Like I was
Yeah.
listening to a podcast, and they're talking about like abs, like guys are getting like ab implantation, plastic surgery.
Yeah.
And he was like, when the guys look fat, it looks like a turtle shell.
What about hair transplants?
So there's a difference between plastic surgery and transplants, right? So you can get hair transplants. There's nothing wrong with that because it's your own hair.
It's not even trans, they just move.
Yeah, no, that's what a transplant is, right? Like taking it out and relocating it. Yeah.
We'll take it from here and put it here.
So you know, I mean, look at the heart is full of all of these things. Is this the type of heart that we should be working toward? And, you know what I mean? Like, and think about this type of person. How angry an individual is this? They're just constantly looking to bring others down. They're constantly looking to hurt others. And the amazing thing is, the more the heart is angry, where is it looking? It's looking outwardly. Do you guys see that? The angrier the heart, the more outwardly it searches. And the more at peace the heart is, where is it going to look? It's going to look inward. You know, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, make us from those who, you know, really look inward. I mean, and all of this is a result in falling into extremes, right? You know, when we allow these things to consume us, it definitely does fall into extremes, and it causes major problems. What if a person has a consistently cold temperament? Just nothing angers them.
It's like not good.
This isn't good either. And it's kind of, yeah, it is kind of psychotic, right? Huh?
It could be a psychosis.
It could be. So, but you know what Ghazāli says? He says this person doesn't have a lot of self-respect. This individual who just doesn't get angry, they just don't have a lot of self-respect. And this lack of self-respect, it can be expressed from their family. It can be expressed from his wife. It can be expressed from his mother. It can be expressed from close friends. It can be expressed, you know, and because of his lack of self-respect, he stays immature. Because of that, he has little self-worth. This is the problem when an individual has no sense of anger in him. Because without anger, what did he fail to do? He failed to stand up for himself. He failed to, and this is something that we touch on time and time again, he failed to draw boundaries. And it also leads to a lack of jealousy. And jealousy is good, right? We should have jealousy over our friends. We should have jealousy over our families. We should have jealousy over our community. You know, these things are very important. These things are very fundamental. And he says here that a man who doesn't have jealousy, he actually has effeminate qualities. Why? Because it is the job of the man to do what?
Protect.
To protect, right? That's essentially his role. His job is to protect. And if he's not protecting, he's not a man. Yeah, leader. So over here, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Sa'ad is a jealous man, and my jealousy is greater than Sa'ad's. And Allah's jealousy is greater than mine. Jealousy over what? Over religion. Staying away from those things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibited and doing those things which he obligated. So why do we essentially have this jealousy? According to Ghazāli, is to protect lineage. Because if an individual doesn't have jealousy over his family and he doesn't want to protect his wife, what's going to happen? You have this culture where, you know, you have a very open culture. You have a very open culture. And what happens with an open culture? There's no family structure. And when there's no family structure, the entire society falls apart. And he says here, and this is one of the statements of the Arab, he says, every nation has jealousy. Every nation has jealousy that is found in its men, and maintenance is found in its women. That essentially, men are meant to protect and women are meant to maintain. And it's a very complementary relationship. And that's what Islam always advocates for, a complementary one, not an equal one, because there's different roles. Does it mean that, are there some women who will protect? Yeah, absolutely. And are there some men who will maintain? Absolutely. But in general, whose job is it to protect? This is a man's job. And in general, whose job is it to maintain? It's a woman's job. So the inability to anger is a sign of a weak spirit. And he says, and why? Because these individuals will actually be silent in front of evil. And we had talked about this, I think, in the discussion on homosexuality and transgenderism. They represent what percentage of the population together?
0.00.
No. So it's I would say, yeah, I would say about 2, about between 2 and 5, between 2 and 5 if you put them together.
Transgender is like
Transgender is less than 1. Yeah. No, I'm saying like transgender is less than 1.
So like 6 million people.
Yeah, like 350 million. That's 1% of that. 6 million. I don't know. I don't know.
I can check.
Yeah. So the thing is, if you, what has allowed this shift in the culture when you have silence? Even right now, when we feel, and the thing is, I've had a number of youth come and talk to me about this. They say when we're dealt with these issues, we can't what? We can't speak up. Right? And what is used? This is used. This idea of political correctness. And so what terms are used to silence opponents? Homophobe, bigot, transphobe, right? You know what I mean? Racist. All of these terms are constantly used to silence opponents. Is that active intellectual engagement? No, absolutely not. If I want to actively and intellectually engage with someone, the first rule is not to what?
Name call.
Not to name call. That's not fair. That's not how engagement happens. Convince me. Calling me a name is not convincing me. You have already labeled me and the discussion is over. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَأْخُذْكُمْ بِهِمَا رَأْفَةٌ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ. Do not let compassion for them keep you from carrying out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's law. And this is a very important verse. That sometimes there are rules, sometimes there are regulations, sometimes there are laws that we are shy to fulfill because we feel that they're very tough. But the purpose of those laws is to what? Is to better society. And we have to keep those goals in mind. When we deal with these situations, the goal is not to protect myself. The goal is to, through this, protect what? To protect society. Yes.
So in our role in outreach and interfaith, we deal with a lot of partners, interfaith partners that accept this kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And so today I had a discussion with some members of the group. You're laying down the law, well, I don't care about interfaith people,
Yeah.
but that's our department. So I feel like
Yeah. So the thing is, can't here, let me put it this way. Does everybody need to be passionate about every service in a masjid?
no.
Right? So for example, there are some people who volunteer for religious affairs. Does it mean that those same people have to be just as passionate about social services? Do they need to be just as passionate about public and government affairs? They don't, right? So everybody needs to find their individual passion. So these individuals who say, okay, well, we're not passionate about interfaith. Okay, that's cool. You don't have to be. There, but what? There has to be a group of people who are. That's it. And it's just a matter of figuring out who those individuals are who are passionate about those things and learning how to engage in the proper way. Okay.
That's tough stuff here.
Listen, it's getting people to engage in any sector of society is not easy. It's difficult. So what are some motivations? If I want somebody to engage, right? So if we're talking about these weak-spirited people, how can I get them to engage? How can I strengthen their spirit?
Challenging.
Okay, challenge them, right? But if they're already weak-spirited, if I challenge them, what's going to happen? It's like, come on, stand up. I'm sorry. Yeah.
How?
Don't be adverse.
So the thing here, how do you do it? By empowering, right? Now, the first number one, it's important for us as individuals, for any project that I'm heading or I'm trying to do, is to cast a large net, right? I have to cast a large net because the larger the net I cast, the more chance I'm going to catch. All right, I'm going to catch fish. But if if I keep casting my net in the same pond over and over and over again, those fish have already learned what?
Not together.
Right, they've learned the strategies to avoid my net because they're not trying to get caught. But the larger net that I cast, it becomes easier for me to bring more people in. Empowering people, right? This is something that's really important too. And there are different ways to empower them and to get them involved. And even outreach. Is there only one type of outreach that you guys do?
No, I know, we talked about this a little
Yeah.
bit, but I still feel there's, and I don't need to bring this here today, but there
Yeah.
are certain structures we work with, so.
No, we have.
When they cast in the net, there's no, I can't cast in it.
No, well, so here, let me give an example. If I'm looking for volunteers for my department, and this is just within one institution, and you guys can use this as an example in your spaces. If I want people to volunteer for me or for a program, what are some things that I can do within the institution? Huh? Okay, yeah, how do I, so the thing is, how do I bring the passion up?
Mention like the spiritual benefits.
Okay, so I can use all of these tools, right? I can mention spiritual benefits, I can do all of these things, but what is the best way for me to get the exposure?
Survey.
Okay, I could survey, right? So I can send out a larger survey to the community. Is everybody going to take the survey? No. Do I need everyone to take the survey? No. What else can I do? Something else that we forget to do sometimes is cross-pollinate, right? So if I know that another department is doing an event, what can I do?
Do like a joint.
Well, I can do a joint, or I can be like, hey, listen, can I come to the end of your program and ask for volunteers? Yes?
Yes.
So this is a way of doing, like, this is a way of kind of interacting within the institution. You know why? Because the people who are passionate about outreach, they're probably not going to come to a religious services program, or they're probably not going to volunteer for a social services program or a women's program, etc. But the thing is, when you ask to be like, hey, listen, can I come to your space and ask for volunteers from your space? You might be able to actually pull out passion from those different spaces. Yes.
So may I say that September 4th is our annual?
No, it's too early. You have to wait until the end. So here he says, whoever is unable to anger is unable to subdue his soul. Right? This is the strength of anger. So when we talk about spirit, when we talk about character, when we talk about adversity, when we talk about subduing ourselves and our souls and our passions, it is through anger that we do that, because it's anger that will actually conquer these carnal desires. And that anger, the term that we use for it is this jealousy, right? This ghira that we have about protecting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's religion, this ghira that we have of staying away from the haram, the ghira that we have for fulfilling the obligations that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. So we have to how do we determine if the anger that I have is the right type? right? Because sometimes we confuse ourselves. Number one, if it's logical, right? If it makes sense. Sometimes we can fool ourselves, but this is one thing, and it's within the religion. And if I feel that I can't make that judgment, what should I do? Ask someone, right? It's very simple. Hey man, like, yo, this thing really made me, like, Sheikh, this thing really made me upset. Was I in my place to be angry at that time? And he can give you an answer, absolutely. Or no, akhi, like, you should really, think better of your brothers, or, you know what I mean? Like, these things can be tweaked. So where it's obligatory to appear, if I see somebody lying and I feel angry, is that appropriate? I see someone not praying, right? I see a Muslim taking advantage of another Muslim. I see Muslims being hurt. Are those spaces where I'm allowed to be, not allowed, are those spaces where I should be angry?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And leave it when where forbearance appears. The moment I see a Muslim start praying, what should happen? Am I going to be petty and be like, well, he wasn't praying 5 minutes ago, now should I be like that? Or what should I be? I should say Alhamdulillah, and that's it. The anger should leave my heart, because why? The goal was achieved. The balance point is what true istiqamah is. So when we talk about istiqamah, when we talk about uprightness, that's exactly what this is. And this is the thing that should help us determine that. So what is that balance point? It's going to be between rashness and this lack of concern, right? So being rash, feeding into my anger, this is wrong, and having a complete lack of concern, this is wrong. What's interesting here is that Ghazāli, he actually, he says achieving the balance point is actually impossible, except for who? The Prophet ﷺ. He's the one who achieved it. But what is expected from us is that we continue to try to draw near it. So remember, we had talked about that constant shifting point. We are constantly going to be working toward it. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intends from us. This is what He Azza wa Jal wants from us, is that we're constantly striving and we're constantly working. And here, لو تستطيعوا أن تعدلوا بين النساء ولو حرصتم فلا تميلوا كل ميلة, to the end of the ayah, you will never be able to treat your wives with equal fairness. Does this mean that an individual should not marry more than one? No, it doesn't. But he is obligated to what? To strive, right? To strive and do to the best of his ability. This is what's important here. So just because you can't completely do a good deed doesn't mean that you should leave it off, or you should fall into complete evil. We constantly have to be discovering and working for that balance point to better ourselves, to better our families, to better our communities. Because if we don't work toward it, nobody's going to work for us. If I want something, I have to be the one that works for it. I can't expect others to work on my behalf for it. And he ends here. He said, and this is the reality of anger and its levels. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal for His most perfect blessings and that which pleases Him. He is capable of whatever He Azza wa Jal wills. May He Azza wa Jal make us from those who control our anger, and make us from those who attain and work to find this balance point. And may He Azza wa Jal make us from those who reflect internally more than we do externally. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sallam. Any questions? No. Now go ahead. Now you can answer.
Dara Hijra is hosting its largest event, which is called the Annual Open House for people of other faiths. So that's why I asked the question. Huh? I'm not waiting to.
It's okay.
This is an opportunity for you to bring in your friends from school, your coworkers who are not Muslim, and say, this is my house of worship. And we need 40 volunteers, and we meet every Sunday. You're aware of that. Yep. So we just need all hands on deck, and we have some veteran people. If you would like to know more about it, check us out on Sunday at 2 o'clock in the library.
Well done.
Thank you so much.
I'll see you guys next week, inshallah. And for those of you that got upset that I announced last minute, I do apologize, but I'm also not sorry.
You know what I thought?